What's up, fam? Paul here, and today I want to talk with you about the principle and the concept of a jockey. A jockey. One of my very first Christian mentors, multimillionaire. This is like 25 years ago. I was broke. I was wet behind the ears. I didn't know nothing about nothing. And this guy, Chris, blessed enough to sit down with me after church. We would eat lunch every few weeks after church, and he would just pour into me. And he would give me wisdom, and he would help me with my crazy business ideas, and he would teach me about the principle of work ethic and work like it's up to me, but pray like it's up to God. And he was a radical giver. He taught me financial kingdom principles. And one of the very first things that he taught me was Proverbs 14:4. And I'm going to read it for you here. Proverbs 14:4. Without oxen, a stable stays clean, but you need a strong ox for a large harvest. Without oxen, a stable stays clean, but you need a strong ox for a large harvest. He read that to me one day and he said, Paul, what do you think that's talking about? And I'm like, I don't know. I didn't have a clue. And he's like, when you have ox, you have, and he said the S word. I was like, oh my gosh, he just swore. When you have ox, you have poop, right? That's what the stable stays clean means. And he went on to educate me about when you have a team of people, you have poop to deal with. And he said one of the greatest mistakes people can make is not having a team, not hiring people or a person because of the second order consequence of that, which is poop, right? However, we got to deal with some crap if we're dealing with people, right? Because we're all imperfect. I'm imperfect. I drive my team nuts all the time. However, what does the second part of that verse say? If you want a large harvest, you need strong oxen. If you want that vision that God put in your heart, if you want those gifts and talents that he's equipped and empowered you with for the benefit of his body and other people, then you're going to not be able to do it on your own. Otherwise, you just have a high-paying job, baby. Without oxen, a stable stays clean, but you need a strong ox for a large harvest, Proverbs 14:4. So if you don't want to build yourself a job where you're trading time for money, then you have to build yourself a business. What's a business? Well, very simple. You as the owner, your job is to support your team. Your team's job is to run clear, clean SOPs or standard operating procedures and policies to deliver consistency to the marketplace. Those SOPs then take care of your customers, clients, members. Those folks take care of the business, and the business takes care of you. That is the proper structure of a business. Now, there's a lot of moving pieces within that, but coming back to the team piece, you have different types of people on your team. And I first learned this when I read the book called The E-Myth Revisited by Michael Gerber, where he talks about 3 levels of team: doers, managers, and thinkers. Doers, managers, and thinkers. And I've had multiple different businesses, multiple different levels, and here's what I want to leave you with today. The team that you have to get to $50,000 a month, the SOPs and policies and procedures, you will have an entirely different architecture to get to $500,000 a month. Let me say that again. The thinking and process and people that got you to $50,000 a month will not be the same box to get you to $500,000 a month. Now, some of those people may be with you. I'm not saying you got to get a new team. However, many times we start with the doer people and we try to force them into the management role or the thinking role, and they're not equipped to do that. And so it constrains the business growth, and then it rolls back up onto your shoulders as the owner. And now you're having to run around like a chicken with your head cut off, and you're having to micromanage, you're having to rework, do things other people should have done, and you're expecting the wrong people to do the right things. Or you've just been not a good enough leader to understand what's going on here. How do I know that? Because I've done that continuously, okay? It's a learning process. So one of my best moves is I sat down one time I was in an action coaching. Action coaching was or is, I don't know if they're still around, but Brad Sugars is the guy who created that company. It's a franchise, and it's a coaching franchise. So they work with entrepreneurs to help them build their business. And I remember I read, he had 20 different books on all these different topics. I read it, I studied it, I loved his stuff. a buddy of mine and I joined a local franchise. And long story short, the local franchise was owned by a guy named Steve, who owned all the action coaching franchises in North and South Carolina. And I was fascinated by Steve. I had a bromance going on with Steve. Never met him, but he had multiple businesses. So he owned this action coach business, but then he also owned other types of businesses, I think 10 at the time. And I was still trying to get my first business up and running. And I was like, this is insane. Like, what does this guy have going on? And so I pestered and I coerced and I cornered and I begged and I manipulated my local action guy to get me a meeting with his coach, the owner of his franchise, Steve. I'll never forget. We met up at a Starbucks. Steve's dressed, real sharp casual. I'm like all nervous and jittery. Probably look like a moron because I didn't know how to, dress at the time. Again, this is like 25 years ago. And so we sat down and my coach is like, hey, Steve, this is Paul. Paul, this is Steve. And then they just sat there and looked at me. And I'm like, oh, Steve, it's not nice to meet you. And he's like, so Paul, how can I help you today? Just boom, right into it. And I explained this. I'm like, how do you do it? How do you manage all these businesses? How do you have all this stuff going on? And he asked me a few questions, like calibration questions. So he knew who he was talking to. Is he talking to a multimillionaire? Is he talking to a entrepreneur? I was a entrepreneur at the time. And he's like, okay, so you're working on your first business. Let me ask you this, Paul. Do you like to start new things or do you like to finish things? Do you like new testing new things? Are you creative? Is it hard to stay on task? Or are you like a guy who does not like new things? You just like to run on the rails. You just like to keep doing the same things, making them better. And I said, Steve, I got to be a starter, man. I've already tried, at that point, I think I was on my second or third business or fourth business. He goes, okay. He goes, what you need, Paul, and the thing he said to me next revolutionized my life. Probably one of the reasons I'm a multimillionaire today is this next little bit of advice I'm going to share with you. He said, Paul, you need a jockey. I'm like, what is he talking about? I'm like, okay, Steve, what do you mean by a jockey? And he went on to explain to me how there's people are built different ways. You have the starters who are fueled by creativity, newness, freshness. You have the finishers who are not fueled by that. They don't want to change. They just want to keep things on the rails, on the straight and narrow, optimize. The change just throws them for a loop. And he said, Paul, you're a starter. So what you need is a jockey, just like a horse needs a jockey, a rider to ride the horse successfully in the race. That's what you need to do, Paul. And that's how I have 10 different businesses operating without me because I have 10 different jockeys. And I was like, OMG. Because now looking back, I understand what was going on. Part of the problem was I would get very bored with the routine required to have consistent and predictable success. So instead of just holding down the fort and doing the work, I would be chasing shiny objects. And it was a very sophisticated form of procrastination. Oh, that new system. Oh, that new tool. Oh, that new coach. Oh, that new product will help me get the result. When in fact, business is simple. It's fun. There's fundamentals in play, right? You've got to identify a need. You've got to serve the market well. And you've got to put that into a framework that is predictable, repeatable, duplicatable. That's it. Nowhere in that is there chasing shiny objects, right? So I tell our members all the time, I'm like, hey, look, getting wealthy is boring as heck. If you want something exciting, go ride a roller coaster. Because whether it's business building or wealth building or investing, all of those things are and should be emotionless activities that are very routine, slow, and boring. So coming full circle, if you want a big harvest, you're going to need to deal with some poop. You're going to need to have a team. You're going to need to understand, are they doers? Are they managers? Are they thinkers? You're going to need to understand eventually to get yourself out of a job, to get a jockey that can run the ops of the business. Okay. These things are called operations managers, general managers, office managers, COOs, some people call them integrators, CEOs, all the same thing. And you're going to need to never quit and never give up and just keep the hammer down and keep going, doing the work, having good, clean thinking, having a mentor or a coach or somebody that can have your blind spots. And God's a big God, right? He created the stars. He created the seed. He can certainly help you to fulfill those dreams and goals that he's put on your heart. So never give up. Work like it's up to you. Pray like it's up to him. Have a blessed day.